Good evening, everyone. Hi from beautiful Brooklyn. I'm Rajendra Roy, the Celeste Bartos Chief Curator of Film at MoMA, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by Gina Prince Bythewood. Before we get to our chat about The Old Guard, Gina's new film for Netflix, I want to welcome all of our members from the vibrant community that makes up the support structure of the Museum of Modern Art. We're so grateful to have you with us tonight, and obviously so grateful for your ongoing support throughout the years. I'd also like to thank our lead sponsor, Chanel, who sponsors all film at MoMA throughout the year. And we're just so grateful that they've moved with us from the theaters to the web and have supported our digital efforts as well. And a big thanks to Netflix, everybody's new favorite friend these days, for supporting this event and MoMA throughout the year. There was a note on the bottom of your screen. If you have a question for Gina, please add that in the Q&A section. And after a while, we will get to your questions. And without further ado, Gina, welcome to MoMA and congratulations on The Old Guard.
Thank you. It's cool to be here.
So before we dig into the film, in researching this conversation, came across one of those random pieces of information that you're just like, what? Turns out we both grew up on the Monterey Peninsula.
Wow.
Seaside High, class of 90. You're PG, 87, is that right?
Yeah, unbelievable.
Is that wild?
Wow.
And on top of that, we're gonna layer the crazy of this random, literally had no idea until a couple hours ago.
Well, I'll add one more to that then. I just found out 2 weeks ago that Greg Rucka, who wrote The Old Guard, is from Salinas.
So, okay, so this was clearly meant to be. And if you don't know about Monterey, or if all you know about Monterey is Big Little Lies, don't really know. It's a hyper-specific place to be from, especially if you're a person of color, especially, all of that. So we have that connection. Also same era, which is, was also a very unique time to grow up there. But
yeah.
You ever go back?
My parents are still there, and my brother lives in Salinas. So we go up about once a year.
Amazing. Yeah, I actually got back just a while ago, and I'm actually quarantined right now because I went to visit my mom. So when you're a New Yorker who goes to California, now you have to quarantine when you come back from California, which is
so sad.
But anyway, just wanted to drop that little crazy bomb of connection.
That is a bomb.
So, but more seriously, huge congrats on entering the pantheon of summer blockbuster directors. An amazing event. And clearly, for any artist who has connected with a great popular audience, but you've done it and you've smashed boundaries. You're the first Black woman to direct a comic book feature, and I have to say, when I look at the list of Netflix films that have crossed into that kind of blockbuster territory, there are a number of women on that list. There's you now, and actually a good friend of mine, Susanna Bier, who made Bird Box, which is probably another film that had that phenomenal kind of reach with an audience. I was curious though, and it was hard to tell from anything I could read online. Did you know going into developing this project that it would be part of the Netflix family, or did you develop it without knowing whether it would be theatrical or streaming?
I went in developing it as a theatrical. We knew what studio we were going to go to, but it's just fascinating the way our industry is, and the place that we were going to go. There was, as every studio has, a fear of a action film that had two females at the head of it. There's just an assumption that it will not do well, and so it gets a certain budget, and you don't go past that. Certainly we all thought that Wonder Woman was going to completely change the game, and it absolutely opened doors and absolutely gave more women an opportunity to do this, and did show that there was an audience. But Hollywood is still reticent, and yet Netflix was actively looking for an action film with women at the head of it and offered us it, you know, substantially more money to come do it there. And, there's that thing of you go where you're wanted, but I'm so used to the theatrical, that's all I know. And I love it. I love the bigness of film. I love sitting in a theater and being enveloped. I love the collective experience of everyone laughing or crying at the same thing. It is the theatrical thing. And so I really pushed that we could have both, and that was the plan going in. But, that my last bit of hesitation went away when people talk to me about the reach of Netflix. And as artists, we make art for an audience. And, this film dropped in 190 countries in one day. And it's surreal. And my entire career, every film I've done until The Old Guard, I've been told that my films don't travel because they focus on Black characters. And over and over and over again, I'm told that. And so we don't get that overseas release. And now, again, to be here and do so much press for, Asia and Latin America and Europe, it's just mind-boggling. And once you have a taste of that, it's going to be hard to go back.
Well, look, I hope that there are serious lessons that are learned in many ways from this moment, from this era. But one of them seems to be clear in a way is that the accessibility that streaming platforms offer align very closely with diversity in storytelling, right? And I'm not sure if that's real or if that's just something I'm feeling that I'm experiencing, but I don't know if you could speak to that at all in your experience, if that feels true to you at all.
I mean, I guess it absolutely does feel true. There's a thing, the decision for an audience to, okay, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to drive to a theater, I'm going to pay money, I'm going to sit and pay more money for food. And that's a decision. And you think hard about that, and you have to be inspired to do that. Obviously, we hope that all our work inspires people to do that. But it is so much easier if you're sitting at home and you literally just have to click a button and this thing is there. So something that you thought, maybe that looks interesting, let me check it out. You're going to check it out, as opposed to with the theater, it has to be something, I believe I'm going to love this. And so there's a lot of discovery on Netflix, which gives them the opportunity and the power to, to elevate new voices and different voices. I mean, the fact that Roma, why was that not in theaters, given who he was, and this was his passion project? Because they didn't see a market for that. Yet on Netflix, it got its due. So, Netflix is really a beacon for filmmakers and those passion projects, as well as young filmmakers.
Yeah, and again, let's hope that translates to theatrical producers as well, and that it continues to allow theatrical venues to screen them. And so, whenever the time is right, we will definitely try and get Old Guard up on our big screen.
Please, card on that mix.
Yeah, I want to move right to what I think is the heart and soul of this film, other than your vision for implementing it, but is the cast, which is, just truly, truly phenomenal. Obviously, Charlize Theron, you would think, okay, that's a given, but I imagine maybe not. The idea of even someone as proven an action star as she is to bankroll a movie, and then again, as you point out, to have two women leads and one of them to be a Black woman who, I know her because her last few features have just been astonishing. Her work in them has just been crazy with Barry and everything. But KiKi Layne as Nile. Can you talk about casting? I guess both of them really, but I'm really interested in how you found KiKi for this role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Charlize, Andy is such a specific character. She's a fascinating character to me. She's 6,000 years old, but she's also the best fighter in the world. She knows every fighting style. And so you know, there, as of right now, because there have been so few opportunities, there's very few women who, you know, can embody that, who not only have the acting chops, but can also do the work that it takes to be believable with the fights and the action. It is really, really hard. It is really hard. It is not the cute videos you see online that are cut to music and seem sexy and fun as they're training. You know, it is 2-a-days, 5 days a week for months. So given that she did it before, I did have a trust that she knew what it would take and would put in the work. KiKi Layne, I looked for a long time for Nile. I did a lot of auditioning, and I saw so many really good actors, but it was just missing something and I knew it was the innate toughness that I was missing. I need to believe you as a Marine. That is a specific thing. I need to believe you as a warrior. And the thing is, I do believe every woman has it in us. It's just not encouraged. So we grow up, you know, tamping it down and learning to tamp it down. But KiKi came in, and it's interesting that you mentioned Beale Street, because as I was auditioning Old Guard and trying to find Nile, Barry Jenkins invited me to a early screening of Beale Street. And I remember looking up on the screen and thinking, gosh, this woman is amazing, but she's way too soft. She could never be Nile, which is idiotic for a director to ever say, because an actor acts. But, you know, she was a new face. Was she playing herself? You know, I had no idea. So she came into audition, and literally 5 seconds in, I was like, that's Nile. Like she had it. She had that innate toughness where I believed her, yet she had this beautiful vulnerability, which made me care about her. And it was just such a striking combination. Plus her chops are insane. And the fact that she could go from Beale Street to this. So I was excited. But after the audition, where in my head it's screaming, this is Nile, this is Nile, we talked, and she admitted she had never done anything athletic before, had never done action fighting, didn't grow up with that. But me being an athlete, like, I know. And so I was just being very specific about how hard she would have to work, and trying to get her to understand, even though I can say it 100 times, it's still not going to be as hard as it's going to be. But there was something in her where I believed her when she said, I will do whatever it takes to embody Nile in the right way. And that's what I needed to hear. And I needed to believe that from her. And she did that. She put in that work. And, you know, KiKi's amazing. And their chemistry is great, because it really mirrored the veteran rookie relationship that I wanted for the film. That was built in the training process. And that's what I told KiKi, that all of this training is your rehearsal. You're building Nile. When you're building up your body and building up your strength and building your swagger, that is building Nile. And then being able to train with Charlize, who's done it before, being able to learn from her, Charlize be able to be inspired by this young one who's just starting out, that then translated to the relationship on screen.
Incredible. And they truly do have a relationship, what we like to call chemistry, screen chemistry. They're not the only ones who have great screen chemistry. And I know you're going to be talking a lot. Everybody's going to be talking a lot about Joe and Nikki. So Marwan and Luca, could you talk about finding those guys, those roles? You know, you would think, okay, it's pretty, you know, secondary characters who are, you know, tough guys, action stars, but they also have to be lovers, and they have to be like believable 1,000-year-old long, you know, husbands or whatever. And you know, it's like I mean, again, that couple, I mean, I already see they're gonna get like the MTV best couple, you know,
they better get that best kiss. I mean, come on. Yeah, well, the thing is, even, yes, Andy and Nile are at the center of this, but I always saw this as an ensemble. I always saw it as the Old Guard. And so to me, Booker, Nikki, Joe, even Copley, Chiwetel's character, never felt to me like supporting characters. And so it was important both to Greg, who wrote the script, to make sure everybody had full story and full character, but obviously also to me, because that just makes for better storytelling if you care about these characters. So Nikki and Joe, who I loved off of the pages, I knew I wanted Marwan really early. I had seen this independent film called Wolf, where he played a kickboxer, and he was so good in it. And I just felt like I was seeing who I wanted Joe to be. And so he was supposed to read, and we had a FaceTime call, and he was overseas shooting a film, and it was, you know, probably 11 o'clock my time at night and really early for him. But it was one of the best calls I've ever had with an actor in my career. It was so inspired, and he was so passionate about Joe and about that speech and being able to say that speech. And I knew at the end of the call, I said, you know, you don't have to read. Like, I want you on set. I want you embodying Joe. I want that energy. It was, you know, a pretty incredible, exciting moment as a director to know with such certainty, to connect that well with an actor. Nikki, I saw a lot of, I didn't have anybody in mind for Nikki, so we were auditioning, and Luca's tape came in, and immediately his eyes, I was like, wow, there's something so soulful about his eyes. And there's also just this innate warmth about Luca. And so, you know,
he's hot.
In the same way, in any love story I do, I needed to do a chemistry read and make sure they have to have a crackle. And if there's a crackle, then I could feed that crackle into a fire through rehearsal and things like that. So I needed to know if they had that crackle. And so Luca flew in for the chemistry read. And another one of those moments I'll just remember from my career, they never met, and they clicked so quickly and so fully. I gave them just like a jump off for a scene and then let them improv the rest of the way. And it was magic. It was literally magic. And it was just fun, and I felt them both. And we finished, and Luca left the room, and Marwan looked at me. He said, I know I shouldn't say this, but I really hope you go with him, because I don't have to, what did he say? I will never have to act, meaning it's not going to be difficult to pretend I care about this person. He just naturally cared about him. And that was really beautiful. And they created such a cool friendship on set. And it was just fun. And the little things that we would talk about of who they were in the world, how they started, the fact that when they were together initially, you know, homosexuality was out in the open, and as they moved through the centuries, it just, governments and religion just took it over and denigrated it, and now they've starting to come out of it again, and the belief, hopefully, that love is love, you know. But to go through all of that and still be there, where it's even beyond love, it's just soul. Like, that's the cool conversations we were having about their characters, and they gave everything to it, and I love the response to those two.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's honestly the first time I can think about, you know, a couple that has gone through history and millennia together, right? There's tons of examples of, you know, straight couples who have that set up, but I can't remember. Maybe there is, but another couple, which puts a lot of pressure on us who have, you know, husbands. And I'm like, oh shit, forever? Like, no, I'm kidding. But like, it's great, because now we have our own kind of like idealized lovers through time thing. So thank you for that. Yeah. But I guess we should also thank Greg for that, Ruka, the writer, who translated his own graphic novel for this script. And I'm wondering, I mean, obviously you would assume what a privilege to have the writer of the source material also collaborating, but was it a blessing or a burden or a little both, or how was that?
Oh, 100% blessing. You know, foremost, I have such respect for him. I love his brain. that he came up with these characters. The way he writes female characters, especially in the comic book space, is so different. That he created Nikki and Joe, that he was able to translate his comic into a screenplay, which is very rare. Normally, you don't get that opportunity. And he is so researched. There's nothing in those comic book pages that hadn't been 100% thoroughly vetted by Greg. Like, he dug deep into every why. And so to have him there on set, and I wanted him on set with me, I just had to turn to him and ask, questions, and he always knew the answer. The actors loved having him on set. They all carried the comic book around. It was our Bible, it really was. And because I came at it that way, that your work here is my Bible and not my blueprint, he immediately gave me that respect back. But it was great to have him on set.
And one just anecdote that I've read, and you can confirm or deny, but that really moved me also on the Joe and Nikki front, was that it was in his contract that you couldn't alter that romance, right? You couldn't, straightify it or play it down or whatever. That he really felt that was critical to the adaptation. Is that right?
Yeah, that was when he agreed to sell it to Skydance. He made them agree never to cut it, and that was a ballsy move, but so great. And for me, when I heard that, it was like, you have no, don't worry. This is one of the reasons I'm here. But I want to bring these guys to life. So, but yeah, he felt that strongly about it.
All right, so we're going to move to some of our audience questions, and a lot of them have to do with the creation of the action sequences. And for those of you online joining who haven't seen or heard, I guess, I've seen and heard, Gina's New York Times behind the scenes, I forget what exactly it's called, but you can go on the movie page, and she does an amazing analysis breakdown of one of the fight scenes, and that's on the plane, which is truly remarkable. But maybe just in a nutshell, you could give us a little blow by blow, literally, on how you produced that.
Yeah, the New York Times piece is called Anatomy of a Scene, and honestly, I've always read it, and so I was excited. Wow, I get my own. In the plane fight, when I read it on the page, it was a scene that really excited me, and was also one that I was wholly focused on because it was two women fighting. And I grew up an athlete. I kickboxed for a couple years. I know what good fighting looks like. And I don't always get to see that when women are fighting up on screen. Oftentimes it's a cat fight, or they've been choreographed as if they were men, and men could go in, where women are throwing each other across the room. We can't do that. We fight differently. And I wanted it to feel real and visceral. But also for me, the best action sequences are those that tell a story, that have a beginning, middle, and end, that are character driven and emotional, because then you care. Then it doesn't just feel like two people throwing punches, but there are stakes. And so that's where I started from. What is the story of this piece, and what am I saying about the characters? And, we have these two women, Nile, who's been kidnapped and shot in the head, and is trying to figure out this thing why she can't die, and she wants to break free. Where Andy, as this new immortal, needs to test her, see what she's about. What does the team have in this young woman? And so that was the dynamic of the fight. In addition, Nile, how does she fight? She's a Marine, so she was taught a specific martial arts program that the Marines teach. Andy knows every fighting style throughout history, so let's have fun with that. And so I wanted, when they came together, to see the difference in fighting styles, but also I wanted to show Nile growing frustrated when she couldn't even touch Andy. And as that frustration grows, she throws out her training and just goes back to the streets and just starts throwing wild haymakers, where then she finally connects. And that just shifts the tone of the scene for a moment. And Nile gets some swagger back and thinks she's got her, but nope, Andy was playing with her. But the great thing about the scene was it showed Nile as someone who doesn't give up. She kept coming through, getting humiliated and getting her arm broke and her leg broke. She kept coming. And so that was, as I said, really the story, the scene. So once you know the story, then that's what I talked about with my incredible stunt team, Jeff Haberstad, Danny Hernandez, who designed the fights, and Bryson Counts. And we started from story, and then they were able to, design a fight. And then I would look at it, they would do it with stunt doubles, and I'd look at it and comment and build on their ideas. And it's fun. It's really collaborative. And, just kept building till we felt like it was right. And then it's, okay, how am I going to shoot it? And that was really the fun part as well. My DP, Tammy Riker, and I, we wanted this to feel grounded and real and visceral. It's two people fighting in a confined space. And we decided early on, let's not give ourselves a crutch and build a plane that you could just move the walls and we can put the camera anywhere. Let's be as confined as the characters. And while that made it harder, I think it put us more into the fight, because I wanted people to feel when they get slammed up against the wall and the ground. And we also wanted to shoot most of it at eye level so that, you feel as if you're in it, as opposed to, crazy angles, which are fun to look at, but doesn't really tell the story. And then also we knew we wanted to shoot it with natural light so that in that airplane, there's no lights at all. So we could shoot 360. The camera could move with the actors. And then lastly, shooting long lenses was a big decision.
Oh, wow.
Because most of the time you shoot scenes like that, wide angle lenses, because it's easy to hold focus. But again, so much of it was about the faces and the reactions and the story to it. And I wanted it to have a beautiful look to it. And I wanted to be able to focus on the faces. So, all of that went into it. But the most important thing absolutely was the fact that I could use the actors for most of that fight. They were in there giving the performance because they put that training in to be able to do that. And they were willing to go there. And, they went there.
It's a remarkable commitment. And again, I encourage everybody to check out the anatomy of the scene, because it just blows your mind, the work that goes into that. MoMA is home to a vast film collection, and we really are one of the guardians of cinema history in many ways over the decades. And so I'm always curious with artists, like, did you reference any historic films? Did you go back and look at other action scenes, other sequences, and would you be willing to share any of that?
Mm-hmm. I watched a ton. It's important. You look at a lot to see what you like and don't like, what inspires you, and then you take all that information, and then the hope is that then you bring your own aesthetic and bring your own touch to it. So, but, probably the three most important things I looked at was The Raid, which is such a good action film. And the action is just, it's real and visceral and creative, yet there's an emotion to it. And Zero Dark 30, because I wanted the realism of that. And then as an emotional template, a film called Man on Fire, which I love that film. And so those were kind of the things that inspired me. But there was also an individual scene that really was my bar, and that was the bathroom fight in MI6 that just came out recently. That is a perfect fight scene. And the hard thing was, though, I asked Danny how long did they have to shoot that, and he said they had 4 weeks.
Oh my God.
And we had 4 days. It was like, okay, how am I going to make the plane fight feel like that? But, we went for it. But it's great to have things like that as a template and to really study it and how. And what made that scene work so well was you felt every moment. You felt what the characters were thinking. And it was because that's really Tom. And that's, I hate to say, that's Superman. I forgot his name. Henry, right? Yes. So, yeah.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. There's a bunch of questions from the audience about the source material, the graphic novel, your interest in graphic novels before this and moving forward. But really, I'd love to get into the mythology and how you took this mythology that Greg had created and translated it through your own vision. There was, one question about more insight on the warrior race and like all this history that part of it is grounded in real history, right? And then part of it is this layered on mythology and the kind of like superhero-y thing. Although people are talking about this as a superhero film. I see it more as like a fantasy kind of epic, which is different. But anyway, talk a little bit about creating that mythology and adapting it to the Prince Bythewood, mode.
It was, well, what's fascinating to me is, all the things you bring as a person to your work. And so much of my work is very personal. But one of the cool things about this is when I was a little girl, my dream was actually to be a mythologist.
Oh, wow.
I love myths, and until, and that was really my dream till my dad said, there's no way to make money with that. So I started to transfer, but I was obsessed. And so it was so fun to do this film because it does touch on myths. And there's a great line that Copley says that what was once thought of as myth was in fact immortality. And you think about all these stories and where did they come from? I love to believe that at some point they started out of something real and then it just, got built and built and built. But everything started for me with research and the fact of Andy, where did she come from? The fact that she calls herself Andromache the Scythian, and who were the Scythian, and the fact that they're a nomadic people that traveled, but they were warriors, they were war first. The fact that boys and girls were taught from a very young age to fight, to ride horses, and they fought for everything. And I loved that mentality. It made such perfect sense for Andy, and it goes back to Greg. Like, it started with Greg, he did his work. And so for me to dig into that and see that it was based in truth was fun. And Quinn, who in the graphic novel was Noriko and was Japanese, when I cast Veronica, who's Vietnamese, I wanted her to be able to stay true to her own culture as an actor, and that was important to her as well. So talked to Greg, how do we make this work? And when we went back in history, there was a lot of female warriors in that culture as well. So getting to start at the truth and then building on that and building this mythology of the old guard was really a lot of fun. The hardest thing is making sure it all makes sense, because an audience will call you on it in a second. But I'm the first audience. I need to understand it. I want it to make sense. But also what was the cool thing about this is when I first read it, you are not given the why. And that was okay. I didn't miss the why. And so early on, we got a couple notes about, we think you need to tell the why. And we pushed against that, again, because I don't think you need it. As long as you believe these characters are looking for the why, they're searching for their purpose. And so we're at least touching on that, but we didn't have to give it all away. And so that was important. But the steps, the story, the mythology of who they are, how they find each other, that all had to make sense. But it's fun to be able to let your mind and imagination go, because it is, as you said, it's a fantasy element to this.
And, in terms of genre, it doesn't, again, for me, it doesn't stay in one exact moment. You mentioned Quinn, her time in the Iron Maiden. Literally, for me, I had nightmares. That's the stuff of nightmares, truly. And so having that horror element. But since you mentioned that, there are a lot of questions. Of course, you got fans of your previous work and then fans of the old guard, but a lot of fans of this new cohort of characters. And obviously everybody wants to know. And the film does set up the potential for more time with them. You think? Quinn's coming. She's coming.
Quinn is pissed.
She is pissed.
For me, it was so going in, Greg, this is based on Greg's work, and Greg's work is a trilogy. So I always knew that there was more story to tell. I actually know where the story goes, and it's pretty great. But you can never assume. We had to make this first one work and stand on its own. And then if an audience loves it and wants more, which is what you hope, then you get the excitement and luxury of getting to continue to tell the story. So it was important to me that this had a beginning, middle, and end. And this is the interesting thing about being on Netflix. I had always envisioned this piece with Quinn, and we're totally spoiling, but I always envisioned it as a tag after the credits. But on Netflix, you can't do that because they play a couple credits and then, they switch you off. So then I didn't want to lose it though, because for me, it would have felt like a whole. I feel like I would have thought, whatever happened to that woman in the box? And so I wanted it in there to not have that hole. And her character is fascinating to me. Literally drowning and coming back to life, drowning, coming back to life for 500 years. Like the psychology of that is so, and then to get out, people have asked, how did she get out? After 500 years, it finally rusted. But but then you still have, she's at the bottom of the ocean, in the middle of the ocean. So now she's still got to get up. She's still got to, that's another probably year of drowning and coming back to life. Like, I love her psychology. I love it. And yeah, she's pissed.
Well, so definitely more. And also, one of our viewers is suggesting you could actually do prequels just as easily as sequels, right? Because there's history in both directions. That would be fascinating. I was also going to just say that maybe you and Spike Lee should have joined forces to push Netflix to stop with that, cutting the credits to the next thing, because The Five Bloods also has a post-credit scene that none of us really knew, and we had to go back and find, right? Like maybe the two of you, and for the future, Netflix, note to Netflix, we love post-credit sequences. Please allow us to have them. One more question. I thought this was a great one from the audience. What feature of this movie would you say is the Gina calling card? Or is there one? Or is there what's your imprint, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that question. Well, I will say, my hope is that I brought a depth of character and made you feel as if these characters were real, despite the fantastical conceit of immortality. I hope that, my use of music, which I love to do in all my films, and use song for score. And, there's one moment in this that I feel is indicative of my work, and that is Nile going up the elevator by herself. The fact that we just stay there and stay with her character and get to embrace the fact that there's this young Black woman who has kind of given into her warrior and given into her heroism, and now is making her way up despite her fears to go save the world.
And I also think that leads me to a need to say her name, to say Breonna Taylor. You're wearing that shirt. I don't know if you want to say anything further, but I want to honor that.
Given this time that we are in, and not only the pandemic, but this reckoning that we are finally having that's so long overdue in terms of race in this country, so many things are tied to, how we are perceived in the world, and the complicity of Hollywood in both the images that they put out that have weaponized Blackness, but also the invisibility. And that's a big one as well, in especially for Black women, who are very rarely the centers of any stories. And when they are in stories, they often have no story. They are there to say a joke, or to be a sounding board for a character, to be a sidekick or a side chick. But very rarely do we get to see our humanity and the breadth of our humanity. And that invisibility really permeates everything. And it goes to Say Her Name, which is really touching on how many women there are that have been killed by police, and we have no idea. We don't hear their names. They are not talked about in the same way that others are. And I'm saying privilege, and I wish I didn't have the privilege of meeting 3 of the mothers last week, and to hear their stories, and and the incredible rage and pain that they have because their daughters are gone and no one's talking about it and they're not getting justice. Um, they just, it is so palpable. And I was, honestly, I was embarrassed because I didn't know. I did not know of these women. I hadn't heard their stories. And when you hear their stories, it's heartbreaking. So it's important to me. I know it's important to a lot of people to, let's start learning these women, learning their names, learning their stories, and fight for them in the way that they deserve to be fought for.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for calling our attention to that, and for your dedication as an artist to bring those stories to life and to light and sharing them with our audience. Thank you. Congratulations again. Obviously, we want more. We want more. So if you do end up directing prequels, sequels, we'll be there for them. I want to thank our at-home audience from around the world, everybody at Netflix and MoMA who helped produce this. Stay safe, be well, and keep making art. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Be safe.